Hello and welcome. It is 4 p.m. on Monday, Central Time. For anybody seeing the video, you should see my face right now. 2 p.m. Pacific, and it is time for Lead with LeAnn. My name is LeAnn Lyon. I am your show host. Not my normal background. If you're watching me on YouTube or later on a recording, if you're watching me on winwinwomen.tv, you'll see this is not my normal recording. If you're listening to us on audio, come on over and check it out. I think you'd be entertained by the video as well. Once again, if you are listening on our live streaming, because this is a live show, come on over to winwinwomen.tv, and right at the top, you'll see the Lead with LeAnn banner. Click the green button, and you can join this show live right here on Zoom. Now, your image won't show, so if you're a little like, oh, I don't want to be live, we can see you and we can talk to you, and that would be phenomenal. We'd love to talk to you because I have an amazing guest today. And one more thing before I get there, you can see I'm not, I already mentioned this, in my normal place. So I'll be a little different in terms of our normal show, but this is, I'm so excited about this guest. There was no way I was going to not do this show today, because today's guest started her career working in newsrooms. And during her time covering local and national news, super fun, I love it, she found her passion for people. Helping them tell their stories and find a way to accomplish their goals was something that gave her career real meaning. So when she transitioned out of the newsroom, she searched for a career that would allow her to have that same meaning in a different way. So after working in public relations and multimedia marketing for a short while, she found recruiting in 2016. I have a fun recruiting story to share too. And since beginning her career in recruitment and talent development, Marissa has placed roles in everything from sales to operations. But her true passion is helping other creative professionals find companies where they can grow and thrive. She now lives in St. Louis, Missouri with her husband, 3 kids, and 3 dogs. So she has a full household. Marissa, are you there? Marissa, come on forward. Let's see ya.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, LeAnn.
It's so good to see you.
So
Welcome,
great to
welcome,
see
welcome to the
you.
show. What's new? I know something new.
Yes. You mentioned we've got 3 kids, 3 dogs. We are actually upgrading to the full package, so we will have 5 kids come this winter. We just found out we're having twins, so life's about to get a little crazier.
That's so amazing. And you're just going with the flow. Like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what's going to happen now. Cool.
Exactly. It's happening, so we're just riding the wave, and it's going to bring a whole new
Uh,
adventure.
that's phenomenal. And so let's talk about I'm sure everybody else listening is interested too. Like, you were like a TV personality.
Mhm. Yes, yeah,
Yay.
that's where my career started. I actually went to a great school here in Missouri. I went to the University of Missouri Columbia, so go Tigers. And really fell in love with journalism. I fell in love with the storytelling aspect of it. Really just getting to meet people from all different sides of life and tell their stories and learn about what was troubling them and what was going on in their communities and how to help, how to help get them help. So that's really how I got into TV, and it was a fun ride for a while.
Oh, very cool. And so journalism, when you went to college, you're like, I'm going into journalism, or was there a little bit of a figuring that out of that as well?
I feel like I was in the minority where I had a very clear picture of what I was doing. Like I knew exactly when I went to school that I was going to be a journalism major. So for me, I didn't really have anything to figure out as far as, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go type thing. It was, I'm going to work in journalism. I'm going to work in specifically TV news. So I had a very clear picture of what I wanted to do, but I know that that's not very common nowadays.
So usually I save this question more towards the end, but I'm going to start here. How how young were you when you got that vision?
Oh gosh,
Or
I
where did
think,
that come from?
honestly, when I was really young, I was in Girl Scouts and we got the opportunity to go to a TV newsroom here in St. Louis and we got to meet the weatherman and we got to kind of see how it all works. And I was fascinated by it. And I had always been writing short stories and writing little poems and putting on plays. And so as I got older, I started noticing that, there was a way to kind of bring those things together into an actual career. And that's how I fell into that. So it was definitely a little seed that was planted at a very young age that just grew and grew and grew.
So what age specifically, if you had to nail it down?
I would say it was probably 8.
8. See, that's
Mhm.
usually the sweet spot. Usually I love to ask my guests this question. What did you love? What intrigued you? What inspired you? What did you play when you were 8 or 9 years old? And at least the seed was planted then, but you already mentioned the other things you were doing, writing and poetry and different things that you've carried forward. And now here, look at you today. You've
Yeah.
accomplished the first goal and now you're doing others. So tell us about what you're doing now.
Yeah. I mean, my life took a really fun and exciting and kind of scary series of twists and turns, to where I was so sure that I wanted to be in journalism that when I came to a point that I kind of was like, okay, I've done this for a few years now and I'm enjoying it, but I don't know if it could like kind of is cohesive with the other parts that I want for my life. Um, Many people in journalism, especially TV news, will tell you it's a little bit of a selfish career. You really have to be willing to give it all to that. And I was very passionate also about starting a family and being close to mine and, other kind of things that brought me passion and joy. And so I ultimately decided to walk away from TV newsrooms. And that kind of led me to an interesting few years of just figuring out what was next. How do I take all of these skills and apply them to something that is as meaningful, but is a little bit more cohesive with having a well-balanced life, in my opinion. And that's how I fell after, going through public relations and communications and kind of the natural route. Um, I fell into recruiting and I quite literally fell into recruiting. I just had someone who said, you like talking to people. We need someone who likes talking to people. Have you ever thought about recruiting? And I had never considered it in any world before. But I was like, it's an opportunity. It's something I've never done. Sure, I'll try it. And gosh, now almost a decade later, I love it. So,
So somebody used that line on me too. Oh, you like talking, you like networking, you should be a realtor.
yeah.
And it was 2020. I had nothing better to do than sit on my porch for 90 hours and get my license. And so I did.
Yeah.
It didn't work out quite as well as your story. Turned out it really wasn't the ideal way I wanted to spend the majority of my time. I still have my license.
Yeah.
No regrets, no regrets. But yeah, that line works sometimes.
Yes.
It works for
Yes. It
you.
does. It does sometimes. It's a good recruiting line.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so do you work for a company? Are you a recruiter for a company, or have you launched into your own thing?
So I started as a recruiter for a company, but after a few years of working for other people, I kind of got to this point where I was just like, I'm so passionate about building a vision. Like I really have this, I don't know if you want to call it an obsession or what it is, but if you tell me your vision, I'm all in on it. And I found myself finally kind of coming to this realization of like I'm building other people's visions. It's time to now build my own. And
Yeah.
so I would say 2021, I believe, I stepped away from corporate and agency recruiting to start my own kind of firm. So I have been running that for 3 years now.
Wonderful. Yeah, there's a term that they used for 2021. It was the great something, where people left their corporate jobs and started their own thing. A lot of people did that in 2021. And now in 2024, well, some of those people are saying, wow, this was really hard to start something new. 3 years in, that you and I are fortunate to be doing our own thing because a lot of businesses don't make it.
Yeah, it definitely, there have been a few tears, more than a few tears along the way. A lot of doubts, but also a lot of really fun wins. And I feel like even more so success in my career, I feel like I've learned so much about myself from doing something risky like this. And it's made the relationships with the people I have around me so much stronger because it really required a village. It required a lot of support. So it's
Yes.
been rewarding, but it was definitely challenging.
Oh, for sure. I feel compelled to ask this question, so I will. I was talking with somebody recently and they said that, and you chose. I'm going to leave this, I'm going to start that. Not everybody gets that opportunity. Sometimes things just flat out end. That happened to me 5 years ago, where
Mm,
suddenly what I had going was no longer, and I had to, start from scratch without a plan. And people say that that can take about 10 years to rebuild from scratch. Now you're in a slightly different situation. You were able to plan before. What do you think about that statement?
oh, it's definitely true. I think even now, having had time to plan and having had time to really kind of make sure before I walked away that, financially I was ready and legally I was ready and I had everything
Mhm.
together so that I could really hit the ground running. I mean, even in year 3, there's still, the highs and lows, and there's still the times of like, is this really working or is it not really working? And, is this going to work long term? I definitely would not say I've got it all figured out. I'm still riding that wave of, I always say like my business is still a baby business. We're still figuring things out. We're still learning how to walk. But
Mhm.
I definitely agree that there's really no sense of comfortability in those first few years of owning your own business. You just have to be willing to ride those highs and lows.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think, oh, it's going to be so easy. I'm just going to flip a switch and I'm going to be a millionaire next week because
Mm,
that's what people, a lot of the social media, the influencers, and I'm not saying it's not possible. I saw ads this week that, how you get into a certain cycle of ads and they're like, we got 1 million followers for our clients in just 9 months. And I'm like, first of all, pay attention. It wasn't in 9 days or 9 weeks, it was 9 months.
mm-hmm.
And and whatever they're going to show or whatever they're going to promote, it's A, not free, and B, is going to take a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, oh yeah, I'll pay you a little fee and walk away and go sit on a beach for 9 months and come back to 1 million followers. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But that's what people want. They expect or they hope that it's going to be that easy.
Well, and I think people too underestimate like how much running something like that actually takes. I mean,
Mhm.
everyone says they want to walk away from corporate because they don't want to work a 40-hour week, right? Like they want to have flexibility and they want to be able to spend their time. But it's like, what do you think a business owner is? Like, I'm sometimes working more than 40 hours a week just trying to, figure out everything. And there's odd hours and things like that. I mean, there are pros and cons, I think, to each pathway. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't think one is any easier than the other. I think it's just you have to find which suits your personality best. And for me, um, I have worked for some incredible, incredible bosses. I have worked for some not so incredible bosses. But at the end of the day, it took some introspection on my end to see, like, you know what? Maybe I'm just not the best employee. Maybe I'm someone who really needs to be able to take my vision and run with it. I'm a great team member, but I also really love autonomy. So, going the entrepreneurial route and being able to really kind of lead with my vision and my passions and my priorities has worked better for me.
What would you guess if maybe you know the answer because I've put it on all of my websites, but what percentage of people do you think do have the idea, inclination, or thought that they'd like to be an entrepreneur? Any guess? Percentage
Percentage, I would say it's got to be somewhere
of
in the
Americans.
80s or 90s.
Actually not.
Really?
41, 40, I know. But see, we're entrepreneurs, so we think
Yeah.
everybody's just like us. The actual number is 41% of Americans have the idea that they could or should be an entrepreneur, which means 59%, the majority, are like, nope, I'm chill, give me a job, I want to do it, go home.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of jobs that aren't like that either. You're recruiting for, I'm guessing, some C-level jobs. C-level jobs are almost never, set it and forget it and, work and go home.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that 59% say that that's what they want. They just want a job. So
Yeah.
it's actually almost inverse of what you thought, which isn't
Huh.
just what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it goes back to, we all think everybody's like ourselves to a degree.
Yeah.
It's sometimes we have to remind ourselves we're special.
Yeah. We're wired a little differently.
We are. And yet only 9%. So you and I do fall into this, because I think your guess was 89% or something.
Mhm.
Not 9% actually claim self-employed for tax purposes.
Oh, wow.
So that leaves about 30%, 33% that are saying, I want to, I wish to, I think I could, and not doing it, or at
Yeah.
least not yet. Maybe working towards it. But that's where, again, network marketing is one area where a lot of people say, well, maybe I can make that work. And it's a great starting point for many, many people.
Hmm.
Network marketing helped me in many ways get going in my career. But
Yeah.
but you're still building somebody else's dream, to be fair.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's about stepping stones, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to start somewhere. I mean, even in recruiting, before I kind of officially called myself a recruiting firm, I was more just like freelancing, like I'll fill a position for a previous client here and I'll fill one there. And then it kind of grew into, okay, now we're running, we're, cooking with gas here. Now we can be an actual firm.
So I was recruited not only into real estate, but actually into sales at one point, where it was basically the husband of a friend that I met through a sales position. And when that sales position was no longer a fit for me, she's like, well, let my husband help you. So I worked with him, and he is the one that found my next career, which was in media, Yellow Book, Yellow Pages,
Oh,
ironically. And he said, oh yeah, I think you should do this interview. I'm like, there is no way, no how that I'm working for the Yellow Pages. Not happening. Yeah, and I ended up 1 year later, I was their President's Club salesperson.
yeah.
So,
Isn't it funny how that works? Sometimes someone
yeah,
sees something in you that you don't see in yourself.
yeah. And I had one sales job at that point, but that was my second. And I was shocked. I'm like, what, where? And I wouldn't go back. I love sales now, but it used to be a dirty word.
Yeah.
When you're working, now you've mentioned vision. So you're working with the people that are going, so you have businesses on the one side that are looking for employees, and you're working with employees on the other side that are looking for businesses. Do I have that right so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So whose vision are you working with? Which side?
So it really depends on who I connect with first. Most of the time, how it works is I connect with a company that's looking to build a team, and I help them hire those key positions. So a lot of times I'll be working with a company's vision, and I love working with small to medium sized businesses because then I get to work directly with the business owner and I really get to understand what they're looking for. What is your company culture? Because I think now it's so much more important. People aren't really, especially the newer generation, they want to know what they're going to get paid. And that's obviously important, but they want to enjoy what they do. So, and who they're working with, that's so important to them. So I love working with small to medium sized businesses. So I typically really get to know their company and I get to know their company culture. And then I go out and I find candidates. But then on the flip side, when, not everyone gets placed, when there's one position and 50 candidates, there's still 49 great people that, I could potentially help. So then on the flip side, I always ask in my interviews, what are you looking for in your next steps? Or what is important to you in your next company or your next leadership team? That way, if I'm on the search for a new client or if a new client reaches out to me, I can kind of make that match a little bit easier and I can do it coming from the candidate's perspective. So I like to think of what I do as like a bridge. I'm trying to bridge the visions between the two, because it's not just about matching skill sets. It's really about matching core values.
Got it. So, I mean, commissions, obviously, this is not, you're not doing this for free, right? Just checking.
No, no, I'm not doing this for
Good.
free.
Yeah, I recently had to explain to somebody that I was no longer, and I hate to say it, but I was no longer going to
Yeah,
just give them all of my assets for free.
yeah,
And why? That's another, for anybody listening that's thinking they want to be an entrepreneur, that's actually a step you have to take. Because at
yep,
some point you're thinking, well, if I just do it for free, if I just do it for free, if I just help these people, they'll love me and they'll refer clients. That's a normal thing to think. And it does work to some degree, but those clients that come in also think you're going to do it for free.
yep.
So you have to be careful and at some point draw a line in the sand and say, I charge for this. But when you work with the potential employee, um, does the pay come from them then if you're actually trying to place them? Okay.
Nope.
Good.
No, I never charge a job seeker.
Okay.
If someone's looking for a new position, again, I think this just goes back to ultimately, I want to be able to help people. And so if someone is looking for a new position and they don't get picked for the one that I have open, I'm always here for, hey, here's the feedback that I received. Here's how you can work on this. Let me know if you want me to take a look at your resume. Let me know if you want me to, do a mock interview with you. I try to make myself as available as I can for those things, obviously still valuing my time and still making sure that I have boundaries set for my personal life because I have a lot of kids. but but I try to be as available as I can for candidates because I've been a candidate before, and I know how hard it is out there to feel like you go on a million interviews or you put in a million resumes and you just never get picked. So I try to be as available as I can on the job seeker side, but all of my fees come from the company side.
Okay. Excellent. Good to know. And now I do want to transition to that personal side. So you're busy. You're a busy business owner with two and with three and growing two. So how
Yes.
do you balance all that?
It is difficult. Honestly, I think first thing, and you and I have kind of talked about this before, but the first thing I had to do was I had to get really clear on what I was building. Because I think when most people become an entrepreneur, they're like you said, they want to be millionaires. Everybody wants, like, I want to build this big company and I want to be a millionaire and that's what I want to do. But the reality is that doesn't happen without also kind of sacrificing a lot on the back end. Like you have to be willing to put into that. And so I had to get really clear on what do I realistically want to build? What does success mean to me? Because being a millionaire doesn't always mean success. So I had to get really clear on that vision. That was something I started at the beginning of the year, was getting very clear on what that looked like for me. And then based on that, had to get very, very intentional with my time. So I do split up my days where I will spend some days, I work all morning and I'm usually up at like 5, just because, again, my kiddos are my alarm clock. So some days from, 5 to noon, I'm working and they know that I'm in work mode. But then from noon until bedtime, I'm all theirs. And then sometimes it flip flops and, I'm all theirs in the morning, we have fun. And then in the afternoons, I'm in work mode.
Yep.
And it helps to have a really supportive partner. I have a fantastic husband who, really understands and supports my vision for what I'm building. So he, obviously fills in when I'm on work mode. And so again, I think there has to be intentionality behind your time to really make it all work.
Yeah, I always ask for 3 points that you'd like to discuss, and then I'm amazed at how often they just naturally come up. I don't usually have to bring them up at all. And in this case, your third bullet point was you don't have to want to build $1 million business to be an entrepreneur. You truly don't. Now, it may eventually evolve into something that turns that way. That's okay. But it's also okay to say, I want to be I want to be an entrepreneur and bring in enough to send my kids to camp
Yeah.
or set your goals, whatever that might be, so that you can do whatever, have the life balance. I know it's something about that too. you mentioned, younger people today and different things is, there's Gen X. I'm solidly Gen X. I'm that brand even. And then you've got the older millennials, the younger millennials, and the Gen Zs, and there's all different. I was at a conference not too many weeks ago, and they said that especially the younger millennials and even Gen Zs really are looking at, they don't want to put all their quote unquote eggs in one basket. And so
Hmm.
they're looking for multiple things. You have experience, you're nodding, so talk about that.
Yeah, freelancing has become a huge thing now for the younger generation. I think they've learned that they can have
Hmm.
multiple passions and they can create multiple lines of income for themselves, while still having a level of flexibility that we all kind of got to experience during, the pandemic. A lot of people found out like, oh, there's another way to work. And then they got comfortable with that, and that's created this whole new shift in really what the common workplace looks like now. I know there's even
Yeah.
some realtor brokerages who don't even have brick and mortar offices. They just have virtual meeting places. And it's kind of like, like a Google Meetup type thing. So I definitely think that also, even just in the recruiting space, it's always, are you looking for a full time? Are you looking for a temporary contract? Do you have to be hybrid? Can you be remote? There's a lot more factors now than just, okay, I want to be in marketing, so I'm going to go get a marketing job. Everything is more specialized, everything
Yeah.
is a little bit more
Yeah.
specific. And so it's really about kind of finding the fine points.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And by the way, I will put a plug in. EXP is the brokerage that was virtual
Yep.
before the pandemic. And
Yep.
that is the brokerage that I am very proud to be associated with as well. Even though I'm kind of taking a break from active selling, it's just still, it's a great brokerage. But here's a fun fact you may or may not know. Did you know that they are not listed necessarily as a brokerage everywhere? They got their start really as a technology company, and then they use their technology to build a brokerage.
I did
So
not
they're
know that.
actually, yeah, EXP, if you look into it a little bit, they're a technology company more so.
That's
And there's a
amazing.
lot in there. Yeah, fascinating.
It is. It's
Yeah.
fascinating how many companies have made that switch and the boom that technology made, especially, communication and connection technologies. It's
Yeah.
been so fascinating to watch how that's shifted.
Yeah. And again, when you're working with the people, your potential employees that are being hired, knowing and talking to them about what's important. My niece, yay, starts her new job, her first post-college job coming
Oh,
up this
exciting.
week. And she specifically looked for a company where she knows she wouldn't be virtual because she's had experience being virtual. And, there's value to that. There really
Hmm.
is. Now, my goal is to live on a boat and continue to do these podcasts, maybe multiple, and expand my business and live on a boat. Um, but I get enough in person through the podcasting and then the networking that it works for me. But I
Yeah.
think other people need that actual human connection, face to face and belly to belly, so to speak. And
Yeah.
knowing that, and before you go and look for a job is super important.
Yes, definitely. That is the one thing I always tell my candidates is, have you gotten really clear on what you want your career to look like? What do you want your trajectory to look like? Because I think a lot of people get pigeonholed into this. Okay, I need to start an entry level job and then I'll move up to middle management and then I'll move up to management and then I'll move up to C-suite. And that's just the natural progression of things. But it doesn't have to be that way. Some people are great at their position, but they're not meant to be management. That's just, it doesn't suit their natural skill sets. And there have been so many times where we try to figure that out in our recruiting process, and we use some really cool tools and assessments in our system to kind of figure out what your natural talents and characteristics are. And there have been many times where I'll come in and talk to a leadership team and we'll find one person that it's like, your skills are not being utilized in your seat. You're not sitting in the right seat right now. And that's probably why you're feeling friction with your position. So let's get you in the right seat. So I think, and really, I think this starts at like the college level. I think it's so important to do this at even before you graduate college and kind of go back out into the big bad world, is find some kind of an assessment, find somebody to work with that works for you to understand yourself and become very self-aware. That way, when you are moving into new positions, you can move into opportunities that really allow you to maximize those natural talents. So you don't feel like you're always constantly having to, focus all your energy on something that maybe you're just not wired to be good at.
Right, 100%. I can't believe we've already been talking 30 minutes. I have to do a quick
Oh my gosh.
invitation to our guests. Listen, if you're enjoying this on our live stream, and we're live streaming on Hulu and Amazon and all sorts of places, come on over and join us at winwinwomen.tv. And you can click on the link and you'll pop in here. Nobody else will see you. We will. And if you have any questions, you're able to put them in the chat. We'd love to talk with you. So come on over if you're a live streamer. If you're watching the recording, just remember this is a recording in that case, but come on over to the live stream next Monday, 4 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and join my next guest and myself for this show. And because obviously it's fun. We're having a good time and we're
Yeah,
learning a lot, both of us, I think. Well, I
definitely.
know I am. I shouldn't speak for you. I am learning a lot.
I
I
am definitely,
appreciate
this
it.
is so fun. I love this.
Oh, wonderful. So you had also said in your three bullet points, you said that it's okay to shift careers. Clearly, you've done that. I've done that as well. But you
Mhm.
said that failure is a part of success. So as we kind of wrap up towards the end here, talk about that a little bit. What do you mean by failure is part of success?
I think, and this is kind of where I always find that my personal life and my business life tend to overlap a lot. And, one thing that I really started looking into is how do we as people internalize mistakes? And where does that come from? Because I know I'm so hard on myself when I make a mistake. I feel like I've let the entire world down. And I did a lot of work to figure out why I felt that way, and then also to hopefully not pass that on to my children. Um, but I think that a lot of those of us kind of maybe in an older generation feel that there's some kind of anxiety around making mistakes, and we strive for perfection. Um and early on in starting my business, there were a lot of mistakes. Some of them more costly than others, some of them tiny, some of them big. But there were a lot of mistakes, and I struggled with the idea that these mistakes had nothing to do with my capacity to build a business, but they were a part of the growing process.
Mhm.
Um, and, I find that a lot of people like me, I think that's kind of where the imposter syndrome comes from. We don't want to step out because we don't want to make a mistake and then have people call us out on it. But that is something that I have found so valuable in these first 3 years of entrepreneurship. And then even, knowing others who are further on in their entrepreneurship careers and journeys and seeing them still making mistakes and learning from them. It just was this realization that like that failure is so important because
Yeah.
it shifts your character, it shifts your mindset, you learn something. I think that if we don't fail, you're kind of playing it safe. You're not putting yourself out there and trying new things. Um,
I agree.
so that's really something that I've adopted in kind of my everyday life, both personal and business, is that I have to be willing to fail at something, because if I don't, I'm never going to learn anything new and I'm never going to grow beyond the point that I'm at now.
Well, I heard you even say earlier, and it caught my attention when you said that earlier this year, yes, year number three, you said that you were really putting together, like, where do I really want to go? What does this business need to be? Does it need to be $1 million business? Is it okay to be whatever other options you laid out? But that was this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of that assess, reassess. Reading a book right now. It's actually called My Mentor Walks on Water by Donna Johnson.
Okay.
And she has a formula in there that, oh, I can't pull it up because it's on my phone. And ironically, today I had to punt and do this from my phone. So but there's a formula in there that actually gave me some freedom because it said, you make a plan, you think of what you're going to do, you start to do it, and then you assess and shift, and then you
Mhm.
move forward. And so there's actually 6 steps to the formula that she lays out in that book. And I send her a quick, because I had the blessing of meeting her a few weeks ago. We've become acquaintances. I sent her a quick text. I said, this right here made a difference. So it's a never-ending journey
It
as we
really
grow.
is. And it's like I tell my kids, it's okay to make a mistake. Perfectly
Yeah.
okay to make a mistake. We just have to clean up our own messes. So,
That's so funny. You're like reading my mind because the next thing was hashtag wise mom, because
yeah.
teaching our children that is so important. So I was going to say, okay, pop quiz. How old are the 3 you have right now?
I have a 9-year, well, almost 9-year-old, but she will say she's 9. I have an almost 9-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and then I have a 1-year-old.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So pop mom quiz. They spill the milk. You do what?
I just kind of say, that's okay. My
Yeah.
answer is that's okay. It was a mistake. Just go get a towel.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
It means too. The proverbial losing your, what, over spilled milk. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why it is actually something people say, don't cry over spilled milk, but people do. And
Yeah.
even with that attitude, my kids would cry over the spilled milk and be like, really? This is no big deal. Just let's clean this up. This is okay. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things you can cry about in your life. This is not one of them.
Yes, I know. But doesn't that take so much like self-awareness as a
Oh,
parent to be like, okay,
it
because inside you're
does.
like, oh my gosh, we spilled the milk. Now we have to clean
One
it up.
more thing. Yes.
So as a
One more
parent,
thing
you
I
have to be
didn't
like,
want to do today.
yeah.
Yeah, mother parenthood is just not for the faint of heart. And I bless everybody that becomes a mom or a dad, but even if take it on unintentionally at first, it's the best job you can ever have, but it's also the hardest job you will ever have, and the most important. I'm
Yeah.
curious, when you said you'd have done a lot of self work on yourself for taking on too much, did you say responsibility? You know, how do you think you'll change that with your kids? How do you not how are you not doing that with them or helping them to not do that?
I honestly think the biggest thing that I've realized is there was a lot of work that I needed to do for me. There was a lot of healing and just becoming aware of kind of why I do things and why I react to things and finding coping mechanisms for myself that were healthy.
Hmm.
Um, and then being able to then demonstrate that to my kids. So that was the one thing that, and I will always say parenting is just like anything else. You've got to choose to be good at it, and it takes a lot of work and research. There really is no book. You just kind of you've got to try to study it as much as you can. But the one thing I've learned is that my kids learn the most by like watching what I do. So, for example, when
100%.
I'm feeling frustrated, I've really had to do the work of instead of yelling and freaking out, which kind of was my normal before I had kids, I had to do the work of being like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath, and now I notice my 4-year-old doing that. When she throws her temper tantrums, we let her go through them. And then at the end, she kind of takes a deep breath and collects herself. And I didn't have to teach her that. She just saw that demonstrated in our home. So that was really the one big thing I think is that your kids are they're going to do whatever you do because they worship you. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
good, bad, or ugly, your children are always going to love you and worship you. So it's setting the best example you can and modeling the behaviors that you want to see in them later down the road, in my opinion, is the most important part.
So you said that there's no book on parenting, but if there was one that you go to, do you have a go-to at all?
I don't, honestly. I never call it researching. I always call it Googling. I do a lot of Googling. Anytime I'm like, oh my gosh, why won't my kids sleep? Google.
Right.
And I should read more parenting books, but I think I like getting those like quick snippets of articles, something that I can read and apply. Um,
Now, don't shoot all over yourself. That's not okay.
but I do a lot of Googling on parenting,
Good.
from all different kinds because I like getting things from all different sources. I like getting things from different perspectives and different communities and different cultures and things like that.
Well, take it or leave it then. I'm going to throw a book at you.
Okay.
There is one for children, which would be perfect for your 9 and under. But
Okay.
there's a companion book for when your 9 turns 11 and starts
Oh,
jumping
okay.
into the teen years. And I think, especially if you can lay the foundation when they're younger, it's to the effect of how to talk so your teen will listen and listen to your teen will talk. That's
Okay.
something like the title. And there's I think there's another version of how to talk so your child will listen and listen so your child will talk kind of a deal. Because if they're not listening, if they aren't talking, you can't really ever know what's going on in their little heads.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. So yeah, you might check those out. The
I'm
best news
definitely
is
going to.
they're very short reads.
Oh, perfect.
And and the teenage years, I will say, having raised 2 daughters, they're a challenge.
Yeah, I don't know if
I
I'm
started,
so looking forward to it, but
yeah, I
got so
started
many coming.
apologizing to my mom a lot
Yeah.
when my oldest turned 12,
Yeah.
and it
That
still
was
continues.
I've definitely had that experience. I actually, the other day, I called my mom and I was like, well, my 9-year-old made me cry. So I just want to apologize now because if I ever made you cry, I'm sorry.
Mhm. Yep. You may find yourself doing that more than once.
Yeah.
Well, I see we are going to wrap up the recording here because we have some guests in the audience. We'd love to answer the questions. So once again, if you are listening, live streaming, or you have you're listening to the recording, you want to come in next time, go on over to winwinwomen.tv, hit the green button for Lead with LeAnn, and that is how you can get in on. We'll have a little bit of a private conversation after we stop this recording. Yay. So guests in the waiting room, just wait. We'll be right to you. So how can people reach you though, Marissa? What's the best way for them to reach you?
So I am actually available on all the socials. You can find me at Marissa Mainer. You can also reach out on my business page, Tyche Talent Agency, which is Tyche is Tyche. It's spelled just like the Greek goddess. So you can reach out to me there. Or, I can go ahead and pop my email into, I'm always open to take email questions, things like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, you heard it here. Probably social. Those people who are listening can jump over on social, find her, follow her, like her posts, send a comment, ask questions. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to chat with you as well. Do you have any gift or anything else that you want to share with our audience?
Not right now, other than the fact that, always plan for the worst with technology. My computer is actually on its last leg. I am going to step right across the room right here and grab my charger really quick while we start answering some questions. That way I don't get
Yeah.
logged off.
Yes, and you did mention you have a recruiting KPI download and white paper.
Yeah.
So we can get to that as well. So I will. So thank you, Marissa. And on behalf of both of us to the audience, we'd love to say thank you for being here today. This has been another episode of Lead with LeAnn on the Win-Win Women Network, TV network. This show happens every single Monday live on winwinwomen.tv, 2 p.m. Pacific time. Come on over and hang out with me and my guests. We love to hang out with others as well. And we will be back next week with another amazing guest. We can't wait to follow us on our social media as well. We are now found on over 40 different places, including YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts, all the normal places that you want to find it. And Marissa, then thanks again for such a wonderful, wonderful, insightful conversation.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Oh, excellent. We'll talk to you really soon.
Yes.
Okay, and thanks again.